Hi guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create a pendant using liquid clay and silver leaf. So what you're going to need is a piece of black polymer clay, and I'm using Primo today, and you want it to be rolled out to about 1 millimeter thick. And I'm working on a separate tile today because I want to bake this, and the tile that I work on is not small enough to go in the oven. So I'm working on a smaller tile today. Okay, and I'm just using a piece of deli paper, so just gently burnish it to make sure that it's nice, flat and smooth. And also so that it is stuck down to my tile. That is also quite important. Okay. Then I'm going to be using a donut cutter today, and this one is, let's see, which one is this one? This is my circle donut, the third one, and it is the 6 centimeter in diameter one. And I'll just cut that and twist to give it a nice clean edge. Then we'll take a little craft knife, and you want a really thin squiggly border around the edge, and try and keep it as thin as you can. The trick is to not cut through. Okay, and you'll do the same here. Make a nice thin squiggly border. Okay, then I'm going to be using some Kemper cutters, the three smallest ones, and some micro cutters. I've got quite a collection of those, but I'm only going to be using some of the largest ones. So let's see. And if you hear that ticking in the background, it is my oven. I am busy baking another version of this at the moment. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our Kemper cutters, and we're going to start with the largest ones and just cut straight down. Okay. Then I'm going to take the second largest, and I'm going to cut that. Then I'm going to take the second largest. Okay. Then take your next largest micro cutter and just go and cut out the areas where you can. And then I'm probably going to go down one more. Cut out one there, and that should be enough. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to very carefully create a cut here. Just be careful. There we go. And then we'll lift up that spot. Now if we have any lift up, I'm going to see if I can tap it down and then lift. And if not, let me see if I can grab my cutter. Fix that. See if I can lift that up. Yes. There we are. Nice and clean. You want it as clean as possible. And then just smooth off that section again. Okay, and then leave this around the edge for the moment. And then you're going to grab your cutter and you're going to try and fit the largest circle you can inside these. And then just try and lift it out as well while you're doing that. Like so. Let me go back and do that this one. And lift. Yeah. And you're going to repeat that with all of them, just going down through the sizes. Just lift that up. There we go. And then you'll go down to the next size, and so on until you have got holes in every single one of these little dots. Okay, and here is how it should look. Now we're going to remove the outside layer carefully. And we are then going to remove this inside layer. Now just be careful. There we are. And this is going to be our framework. So now I'll just pop that off to the side. And we're going to be working with Fimo liquid clay or Fimo gel. And what you're going to want to do is work with some sort of a translucent clay. I'm using Fimo because I'm not going to be using a heat gun in this tutorial. I only want to be using the oven, and so it is the most translucent clay you can get without the help of a heat gun. Kato liquid clay is the most translucent with the help of a liquid clay, with the help of a heat gun. But it isn't very translucent if you just put it in the oven. So I'm going with Fimo gel because it is the most translucent clay I can get without a heat gun. I'm squeezing out a fair amount. And I'm going to be using honeycomb and amethyst today. And now open these alcohol inks away from your tile and then put about 2 drops into your liquid clay. And if you have more liquid clay, you'll need to put more drops in. And so you're going to have to gauge the colour to however you want it to be. If you want it to be lighter, add less liquid, add less alcohol ink. If you want it to be darker, add more alcohol ink. There we go. Clean that off. And remember to close your alcohol ink bottle because you don't want to be leaving that open because spills do happen. Then drip about 2 amethyst in as well. And we'll mix that up. Okay. Then I'll quickly clean that off and we will bring over our piece again. And what we're going to do is just before we put the liquid clay in, we're going to see if we can clean up these edges if we can. So there are some bits that we can clean up, but for the most part that's fine. Okay, now grab a small paintbrush and we'll start with the yellow. And all you're going to do is you're going to take that yellow and you're going to dip it into your liquid, into your bezels. And you can also use that to slightly clean up around the edges as well. You can just move it around and then pick up any black bits. I might see if I can do that here as well, because the liquid clay is sticky, so it can help remove any bits. There you go. That's better. Okay, and then all you're going to do is you're just going to pop that yellow liquid clay into your holes. Every single one of the little holes. Don't put it around the outside though, it just needs to be in these holes. And then the purple is going to get painted around the outside. So once I've filled in the holes and the outside with liquid clay, you will then put it into the oven for about half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and that should cure the clay and the liquid clay. And the liquid clay is going to hold it together in almost like a little net, so that your clay circles don't fall out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put silver leaf underneath, and that's going to look really nice. And don't worry if the liquid clay touches the black. That's the nice thing about working with black polymer clay, because the alcohol ink isn't really going to make much of a difference on the black, because the black is such a strong colour already. You're not going to see the liquid clay on the black. Okay, so we're just about done with our yellow, And just make sure that you fill that in enough, because you want a nice strong amount. You want a fair amount of liquid clay. You don't want too much that it's going cloudy, but you want enough that it is going to hold those pieces of clay together. Okay, and then I'll show you this when it is baked. And I've got one in the oven going so that I don't have to wait so long for this to be ready. Okay, so these are now out of the oven, and so here's the one that we did, and here was one that I did as a practice run. So I definitely like this one better, so this is the one we're going to be using. And so what you're going to need is a sheet of black polymer clay rolled out on the same setting as before, so that it is about 1 millimeter thick. And then you'll need your texture stamp of choice, and I'm using this abstract animal print pattern because it reminds me of the same sort of pattern that I'm using in here. So I'm just quickly going to brush this with cornstarch, and the cornstarch is going to help prevent it from sticking. So I'll just quickly push that on. Okay. Get rid of that. Okay. And then I'll stamp that in. And now I want to be careful because I haven't cornstarched the front here because I want to stick metal leaf onto it. So I'm just pressing in. And I'm not pressing too hard, I'm just pressing enough that I'm going to get a decent texture. But I'm not worrying about pressing it all the way down to the bottom of the texture. Okay, and that should come out pretty easily. And don't worry about the cornstarch, that's very easy to get rid of. There we go. Okay, and now what we want to do is quickly trim away our excess, because we don't want to put leaf on parts that we don't need. So I'm just going to trim around this texture quickly. Oops. There we go. Okay, and now before we start on the front here, where we're going to be putting the metal leaf, I want to just quickly decorate the back. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using some purple and gold mica powders. And these you can find on my Etsy shop, but any purple or gold mica powder will work. And it's supposed to match quite closely to your pendant. Okay, and I'm just going to grab a brush, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to dab our powder on, and I'm not brushing it in just yet. I'll use a larger brush for that because it will take longer to do it like this. I'm just going to brush the purple and the gold together so that they kind of mingle on the back. Okay, and then let me just show you what I want to do. I'll take that nice big brush that I have, and I'm just going to stipple around and then brush. And so I'm just going to go and I'm going to fill in all these areas with mica powder. And then we are going to sand it later, so we don't have to worry about taking off the mica powder off the back right now. But later we will sand it so only the raised areas have the mica powder. So just go and fill in all of those pieces. Okay, and so that looks really nice now. So now we're just going to go and do the other part quickly. And I'm going to be using some silver leaf. And you can use any silver leaf, but I'm going to be using the one that I supply on my shop because it's a little bit different from the other silver leaf, whereas it doesn't have so many ripples or cracks when it's being laid down, and it's more of an in-between between silver foil and silver leaf, so it doesn't fly around as much. just taking it out. There we go. Then I'll tap it in the middle and then gently tap it on. And it should stay as one solid piece, hopefully. It might have a few cracks in it because I do need to still smooth out air bubbles. It's okay if it cracks, but for the most part it should stay in one piece. Okay, and I'm just going to pick that up, and I want to just crack it a little bit, just by gently stretching. But I don't want large cracks, so I'm not going to be rolling it through a pasta machine or anything like that. And you can get a very nice controlled crackle with this. And I'm not sure if you can hear it, but it does, you can hear its cracks. Okay. And that should be enough. I don't want too many crackles. I'm just going to place this on to see if I'm happy with it. I'd like a few more cracks, so I'm just going to continue to just crack it a little bit at a time until I'm happy with it. There we are. So now we're going to choose the section that I like the best, and it's around about there. And you want to take a brush and just make sure that it's nice and clean. So I'm going to be using the same one that I used for the mica powders. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of Fimo gel and just make a small circle of it. And I'm just going to gently brush this out, because we want to make sure that our piece sticks to this leaf properly, and silver leaf in general doesn't like sticking to the polymer clay, and it can cause issues. So we're just making extra sure that it will stick by putting some extra liquid clay on. And just spread it out nice and thin. And that should be good. Place that on. Now press. Just make sure that it is stuck on properly. And then I might just use this to press down to make sure that it is stuck. Okay, there we are. Now I'm going to see if my donut cutter will cut over the top, but sometimes it doesn't fit perfectly because distortion can happen a little bit, and so if it doesn't, which it didn't there, I will just take my craft knife and trim around the outside. And now it might look messy, but we're still going to do a little bit of sanding, and the resin makes a huge difference in the end. So don't worry if it looks a little bit untidy at the moment. There we go. I think that looks nice and clean. Just making sure that it's nice and smooth along the edges. And I will smooth off the edges with a little bit of a smear later once we have baked it for another hour. So I want to make sure that's nice and clean. Okay, and then I'm going to go and pop that in the oven for another hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And if you have any bubbles, you can actually go in generally with your blade and just make a little prick, and those bubbles will go away. now I'm just going to go pop this in the oven. Okay, and so it is out of the oven, and you can see that that liquid clay is cleared up nicely, so you can see that beautiful shine that the metal leaf gives us. And here is what the back looks like. And so now what we want to do is we want to fix up the sides. Now this might look a little bit messy at the moment, and it is going to. We need to do a little bit of sanding to clear up this black. And so we're just going to take a piece of black clay, roll it into a little snake, and we're just going to smear that along the edges. And the warmer and softer your clay, the better. So this is a nice place to use Sculpey 3 if you happen to have any. If you don't have any, use Primo or whichever brand you're using. But if you do have any Sculpey 3 that you're trying to use up and you don't know what to use it up on, this is a good place to use it. But it's not worth buying it for this technique. Just grab your current brand and just roll it in your hands to warm it up, and that will soften it up just fine. Okay, and we just want to do that the entire way around so that it goes from this kind of metal leaf smeared section to this plain black, which gives us a nice finish. Then you'll bake that for about another 20 minutes. And then we will move on to sanding, which will make it clear up a lot, which is what we want, make it nice and clean. And then we can resin it, and that will be the final touch to make it look really nice. Okay, and so I finished all of those edges. Now just make sure your finger's nice and clean, and then just go around the top and smear off any little bits that are left. Like so. And do that on the back too, because you can have some little bits that have slipped over. Like here's one as well. And also we're going to be smoothing away any fingerprints that might have it. And I don't worry about inside here, it's such a small section and you're never going to really be able to see it properly, and you're never really going to be able to get in there correctly. So usually it's just better to leave that section. Okay, now I'm just going around making sure that I got everything. If I did miss an area, I'll just grab a little bit more clay and smear that section and then smooth. And this technique does take a little bit of practice, and the softer the clay, the easier it is. Okay, and so now we're going to go pop that into the oven for I think it's our final bake actually, and then we can move on to sanding. And so now that it has been baked the last time, you can see that the edges are much better. And so now we want to start our sanding process. So I'm just going to grab my sanding paper, and I'm actually going to start on the back because I want to remove this extra mica powder. And it should be fairly easy. It should just stay in the indented areas. Okay, and the black is going to look pretty mute at the moment, so that is basically clean. And then I also want to do that on the front. I don't need to be sanding it to a really high shine. We want to be just removing any mica powders and bits and pieces that might have accumulated on top of our piece, so that when we put the resin on, it looks like nice clean black. So you don't have to worry too much about going through all of the grits. I want to, just to make it look nice, but you don't necessarily have to. Just go up to maybe about a 2000. And you can see this is quite flexible, so if it is baked properly, it should be quite flexible. And that's fine. The ice resin that we're going to put on this will stabilize it. And even if you didn't want to put ice resin on, it's fine if it is flexible, unless you actually wanted it to be firm. If you wanted that, just make the backing a little bit thicker. But if it is flexible, it means that you did bake it correctly. If at the moment it is not flexible, you need to be careful with it because it means that you haven't baked it properly, and you should probably put it back in the oven for another hour or so, at probably a little bit of a higher temperature, because if it hasn't baked within an hour correctly, then it means that you haven't got it the correct temperature. So anyway, I'm just going to continue sanding up through my grits. I'm going to sand the front, sides and back up to probably about a 2000, just to get it a nice clean black finish. And the back I'm going to sand all the way up to my highest grit, because this one we're not be putting any resin on it, so it needs to look nice and clean and black. Okay, and here's how it looks now that it's been sanded. Much cleaner, that's for sure. Got a nice clean back, and the sides also nice and clean. So now what I want to do is I want to grab a buffing wheel, and you can do this by hand if you want, but a Dremel definitely works best. And here is the brand that I'm using. And now I'm just going to switch it on, and this makes a little bit of noise, so you might want to turn your sound down. Right, and so now the reason I've buffed the front is because it will get out any dirt or things that you might have had in there from the sanding process, and even from the creating process you can get some dust and stuff in here, and generally doing that will get rid of most of it. And then you also buff the sides and you buff the back. And now for the back and the sides, I want to just grab some Renaissance wax. Here's what it looks like. And just grab a bit of that. Just gonna work it onto the front. Oh, excuse me, the back. We don't want it on the front because the front is gonna have resin, and resin doesn't seem to stick very well if you put Renaissance wax on. So I like to put on the back of beads generally before I resin, because it actually can help if there are any drips. Personally, it's better if you don't have any drips, but having the Renaissance wax helps. And so here you can see the back is beautiful and shiny now, and so are the sides. And now a trick to when you are buffing, and this is something that I only realised somewhat recently, is you must treat it like one of your sanding papers. You don't just go over and buff. You actually will go around in the same sort of pattern that you did with your sanding paper. So if you did in a straight motion this way with your sandpaper, you should do that with your buffing wheel, and with me I generally go in a circular motion, so that is what you want to do with your buffing wheel, and you want to do it a few times almost as though you're sanding, and then you'll get a beautiful buff. Okay, so now we are ready to move on to our resin. So I'm just going to pop that off to the side, and I'm going to be using ice resin, and I'm just going to be using a plunger today because we don't need too much resin. I'm going to roughly guess the amount that I'm going to need. probably about that much. Okay. And I'll just pop that back on. And I'll start mixing. And you want to make sure that it is properly mixed. I generally mix for at least 3 minutes, sometimes 5. And you just want to make sure that you get all of those little bits around the edges and just make sure that it is properly mixed. And the ice resin plunger measures out the resin for you, so generally your resin will cure correctly. The only reason it wouldn't cure correctly is because you didn't mix it correctly. So take the time to do that correctly. And then when I'm done mixing this up, I will grab a resin mat and I'll put my pendant on there because I don't want any drips to get onto a surface like a tile or a glass tile, because the ice resin will stick to it and then the pendant will stick to it, whereas if I use a silicone resin mat, the resin won't stick to the silicone resin mat, and so it makes getting rid of the drip a lot easier. But again, we are aiming for no drips, so this is just in case. Now I'm just busy scraping off my piece correctly, and that should be about enough. So I'm just going to let that rest so that the bubbles will come to the surface, and I'll go get our resin mat. There we go, and I like the blue ones because they don't clash. A while back I was using red and it didn't look very good against most of my pendants. So now this one, we've got a lot of the bubbles to rise, and so you will grab some sort of a straw and just blow. And that will get rid of a lot of the bubbles. And then I'm just going to pour this onto here, and I'll worry about the rest of the bubbles later. Okay, and I've just poured a little bit, I don't want to over pour. Start with a little bit of resin, get it to go into all the spaces, get rid of any bubbles that most likely will appear, like here's one, and then I get rid of it, and then I can add more resin if I need to. And you can see that it really brings out that silver leaf, and it will make it really nice and shiny. And now I'm doing it in a sort of colour palette that is fairly unusual for me, and I'm going for almost like an electric. My inspiration for this is somewhat almost like an electric leopard, and that's probably what I'm going to call this piece. So I'm kind of going for that sort of a pattern, a leopard pattern, but very abstract at that, but that's kind of what I'm going for. And I just thought that purple and yellow look really nice together if I'm going for that kind of electric sort of a theme with the metal leaf behind it. And so that's kind of what I'm going for, but you can try this technique with many other different things. You don't even have to put the silver leaf at the back. You could try just putting maybe some pearl white at the back, and then it won't come out as shiny. You could try lots of things. Okay, and now I'm just going to swap over my little skewer that I'm using. I'm just going to go and find these bubbles and just gently work them to the surface, because these large ones generally don't rise, and so you need to get rid of those. Okay, got rid of most of them. Then I'm just going to go and I'm going to pour a little bit more resin just around the outside, but that should be enough. I do want a dome, but I don't want to overdo it. So let me see. If I see it pulling away from the edges like it is, I'll add a little bit more just around the whole thing. when you're adding with something like a donut like this, you don't want to just add in one area because it will spill. You want to just add it around the whole thing, and then it should even itself out. And I'm going to stick with that. That should be enough. Okay, now I've got quite a few bubbles in there, and that's fine. We will let that rise to the surface, and you have about 40 minutes at least to work with this. So during that time, get rid of all of the bubbles, and then when it's done, you can leave that for about 12 hours at least to let it cure, and 24 hours before you actually start wearing it, and then the resin will cure. Or you can try a technique that I've been working with recently, where I wait for all the bubbles to rise and for the resin to get fairly tacky, so around the 30 to 40 minute mark, and then I'll put it in the oven at a really low setting. So for me it's about, let me see, it's about 70 Celsius. But it needs to basically be warm enough that it feels like you're in the midday sun, but not so hot that you couldn't leave your hand in there. Not that you'd want to, but you should be able to put your hand comfortably into the oven. You should be able to comfortably touch the tile, and it should just be like hot bath water. So that's the sort of thing that I like to do, and that will cure the resin in a maximum of about 3 hours, which will take your cure time from 24 to 3 hours, which is much better. Now, a lot of these bubbles have risen, so let's see how many we can pop. Okay, and a lot of them popped there, so it's much clearer now. And I can see that I'm getting a little bit of pullback from the side, so I'm going to add this last little bit of resin. And that's going to introduce bubbles again, but that's fine. Okay. Just go around and add that to those edges. Now you might get spills. I'm really hoping that we don't, because I've been very careful, but it's still possible. If you get a spill, leave it. Don't touch it, don't move it, just leave it. You'll make it worse if you fuss with it. Let it finish curing, and then we can deal with drips if there are any. But anyway, just leave this for about 40 minutes, get rid of all of the bubbles, then either leave it to cure for 24 hours, or you can pop it in the oven for 3 hours. Okay, and so this has come out of the oven about 2 hours after I finished it up, and it looks really nice. It's fairly hard. I would probably leave it still another 12 hours to fully cure before I actually went and wore it or tried to dig at it with my fingernail, so I'm going to be a little careful, but it's not tacky at all to the touch. And there's the back and the sides. So now we're going to take a piece of rat's tail, and I got this off of Fine Mountain Gems, and you can get a nice big reel of it, and it's nice and thick, and that's what we're going to be using today. There's a thinner version called bug's tail, and I do believe there's an in-between version of the bug tail and the rat's tail, and that is called mouse tail, I do believe. And so now I'm just going to take one of my cord ends, and I'm just going to squish that onto here. Okay, now just checked to make sure that's not going to slip out. Okay, and I'm going to do that on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to take that, pop that third on it, and let's hope that I got that the right way around this time around. Did I? No, I have to go the other way around. Okay, and I just want to see how this looks. And it looks quite nice, and I want to see if I want to put a little silver bead there. I think I do, so let me see if I can fit that through. I probably should have checked this before I put this on, so I'm going to have to pull that off. So yeah, you would check that before putting your crimps on. But anyway, just going to pop that down there. Let's see, does that look nice? Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. And then we'll just quickly pop that through, squish that on. Okay, I'm just making sure that I've got that right. There we go. Okay, then I'm going to grab my pliers, oh not my pliers, my clasp and jump rings. Okay, and so I've put one on, grab the other one, open the jump ring, put the clasp on, and pop that onto your cord end. And there we are, really simple, really easy way to finish it off. And here is how it looks. And so let me see if I move this around, if you can see how beautiful that flashes. Let me just quickly smooth it off because it's got a few lines on it. There we are, and now you can see how that looks. And the silver leaf under there is really cool because it flashes in the light, and so in some areas you can look quite dull, but other areas it can look really nice. And the back also matches quite nicely. You could even wear it that way around, though I think it's a little dull for that. So that is basically it for this tutorial. So I do hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Do let me know in the comments below if you would like to see more liquid clay tutorials, and I will experiment around and see what I can do. And let me know if you like these really bright, the word that I like to use is kind of spacey pendants. If you do like them, let me know in the comments below and I'll see about making some more of those as well. And if you'd like to see more tutorials like this one and other ones that are a little bit different, please do check out my Patreon community on Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description below, and you can see tutorials like this every single month and many other things. You can also get a discount to my Etsy shop, Jessama Design, and so it'd be super helpful if you could go check that out, as it helps me keep posting free tutorials on YouTube. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.